how did you go about turning the shorts into a book? Because it's not all in the same order, it's all been changed. And
Yeah, the first thing I did was I wrote everything that was in the shorts, but longer. And I'd already written some scenes. I'd written some scenes while writing the shorts that I was like, I can't possibly dramatize this because there's only me in 3 different costumes with a couple of different accents, but this thing happens and so I should write it down. Most of those scenes made it into the book in some form or another, which was great because they were the ones I really enjoyed writing. But having done that, I then went, how can I change this so it actually makes sense? Because a bunch of things happen in the book where in an actual novel they wouldn't make sense. And in the shorts they didn't have to make sense. It was just like, this happens and this happens and this happens because reasons. And the main one was the assassination attempt on Rosamund's sister. And like, if I were writing this book from scratch, either that would not be there or it would be completely different because it doesn't make sense. And I was like, I don't know what to do with that. But it has to be in there because everything that follows is that way because of what happens then. And it means that Catherine's not at the ball and it means all of these other things happen. I'm like, what do I do? I went, it's okay. It's a meta book. I'll just have Henry say, that's really stupid. And then they can have their, like non-romantic equivalent of a third act breakup. And we move on. I listened to part of a podcast where these people were reading the book, but they knew nothing about the shorts. And they were like, how much of this is just like, we think she's doing something clever, but actually she's just kind of making it up? And I'm like, see, you noticed, but that's okay. I had, my very first book event was my auntie's church book group. And I got in there and I realized every single one of them, except for the lady who was having cataract surgery, they'd all read the book, but they had no context for it at all. And I was like, how did you find that? And they were like, well, it took us a while to figure out what was going on, but then it was fine. Like, good. I did then realize that people have been reading the book who have no context with the series at all, and I'm like, guys, how are you doing it? Like, I did my best to help you come in cold, and they're all also, more mature ladies, so they didn't even have the background of fan fiction where the author sometimes inserts author's notes and then they argue with the characters, which was the other thing that I took a lot of inspiration from. And then I thought, I wonder have they all noticed that the main character looks like me? Do they just think I'm a narcissist?
I'm going to be honest here. I'm coming in cold.
Oh, welcome.
So, YouTube Shorts, it felt very left field for me.
Oh, okay.
So would you recommend that I watch those before starting the book?
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
We're having a debate here. Okay. All right.
Having only read half the book and not really seeing any of the shorts, sorry Jill.
That's okay.
I find the book really accessible.
Okay.
And I plan to watch some of the shorts, or at least probably all of them, once I've finished the book, but that's how I've liked it so far.
I 100% agree with you. I watched only 1 or 2 of the shorts and then I was like, this seems hilarious. And then you said that you're coming out with a book and I was like, okay, I'm going to wait and see what's there. And then I read it and I was like, yeah, this is great. Like, I like the way that Jill subverts the classic romantic tropes while also having it be romantic. And it's almost like Caroline's character is almost Terry Pratchett-esque in terms of like coming in at the bottom and just being like, well, this is this, and this is how it is there, It's pretty good, yeah. I agree with him.
I've read the whole book and watched all the shorts, and it actually is a lot easier to remember who is who in the book, and I don't know why.
That's fair. Like, I was gonna say,
everything else I'm like, oh yeah, I know who's who because they have different faces, but I can't see their faces, and like I can't even see a face, and it still makes more sense.
That's fair. I was saying earlier that if I had decided to write a book and then done some YouTube shorts as like really clever marketing, which would have been a great idea. Oh well. I would not have called the main characters Caroline, Catherine, Robin, Rosamund, and Roland.
Talking within the writing process, there's lots of different threads going on. You've linked it to the series, you've got other new ideas, you've mentioned there's scenes that don't appear that do appear in the book. How, when you were preparing the book, did you keep track of all these different things? Did you at any point write out a map, draw a visual? Did you scale it on paper? Or did you just literally carry all these different things in your head? Did you write notes? Did you have lines of plot that you then pieced together, or did it just come out as it happened?
It got reworked a lot. So when I started, I went, there are so many things, what do I do? And my friend Joriam, who also has a YouTube channel, he said, you should get Post-its, good Post-its, not those like fake Post-its, because they will fall off and everything will be sad. They still fell off and I was sad, but it didn't, you know. So I made a little board with all of the events as they happened in the shorts, and then I went, right, okay. And then I tried to move a few of them around. Eventually, when the book was done, I made a spreadsheet where I listed all of the things that happened in what order, and then I made a short where Caroline made a spreadsheet, because I was like, that's funny, but also she would. There are, you know, a lot of people don't realize that Caroline is not me on YouTube. There's like, I would say at least 5% of the shorts audience think that my name is Caroline. And because a lot of people, I've found out, can't tell the difference between accents. And so they're like, oh yes, that is the woman, and she's, you know, she just sounds the same all the time anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But they think I'm Caroline. The main difference between Caroline and me is that Caroline actually enjoys writing. So she would love a spreadsheet. But I was like, I don't know what's happening. Let's just write it all in the spreadsheet. And I didn't want to, because I was like, no, it's gonna take so long. But it did mean that I then went, I've just noticed that Robin goes missing for 36 hours and nobody comments on it. Oh. And nobody had noticed. We were like 4 drafts deep at that point, and my patrons had read it, and my editor had been like close reading it, and I sent it out to people, and I had to email my editor like, Steph, I need to send you like 2 chapters again, because I just realized that Robin goes missing for 36 hours and no one has noticed. She's like, it's fine, don't panic.
So for context, I haven't read the book yet either, but I've seen the shorts. Rosamund feels like, on reflection, an extremely feminist heroine, because she's just a realistic woman doing realistic things. Is that something you've been aware of as you were creating it, like kind of this being a feminist thing in just representing women better, or is it just you being you and doing what you want to do?
Well, I always figured that I can't. All right, where to start this one? I never enjoyed the Little Mermaid movie. That's a really left field place to start. Just go with me. I've got it. Okay, I never enjoyed the Little Mermaid movie because it was like, she's the ginger Disney princess, and I am also ginger. And I watched it when I was like 7 years old and went, why do you act like this? Why are you so annoying? I don't like you. I'm gonna go watch Beauty and the Beast again. But then the older I get, and the more I read like the very young heroines, I'm like, of course you act like that. You don't know any better. And so I thought, what would you act like if you had a background of both the kind of very stiff upper lip aristocracy kind of thing, and also just that you were very practical, and you'd been being very practical for a very long time. And so I just wanted her to be like a normal person, like a normal person with some like extra skills, like, you know, with the swords and the knives, but I wanted her to feel like a real person.
In real life, would you have to refer to a Henry to ask questions on your expertise, which I think is the swords and armour, or do you know it all yourself already?
No, I absolutely ask, because I remember someone saying the people you don't want to anger on the internet are like the gun people and the horse people, because they really know their stuff and they will tell you at length. I've also found this to be kind of true of the Warhammer people, but because I know nothing about Warhammer, it's fine. I just go, tell me about this, and then they do for 8 paragraphs. Like, good job, guys. Never change. Yeah, no, I have a whole bunch of people that I sort of fact check with. because otherwise you end up getting into, like, sometimes I know things, and sometimes I think I know things, but I don't, and so I'm like, I'm just gonna check before I say this in front of 500,000 people, because it's slightly embarrassing if you get things, like, very wrong. Sometimes you get things correct, but there is a common misconception about them, and then 100 people will show up to tell you that you're wrong, and you're like, no, I'm not. So when I comes to swords and armor stuff, I'm always like, I'm just gonna get a second opinion, and maybe a third. But luckily I have lots of people to do that. When I did my corset versus knife video, I texted my very first stage combat instructor. His name is Duncan. He lives in Kent too, but he's currently like out of the country or something. I was like, that's a terrible excuse not to come to my event, Duncan. And I said, and the text was something like, are you free any day next week to come over to my house to stab a mannequin wearing a corset?
For the purposes of the video.
For the purposes of, I did mention it. I was like, I'm making a video. And he just went, yeah, I think I can do Wednesday. He did not ask for details. He did not, he wasn't even like, why, or how, or what do you mean, he just was like, yeah, I think I can do Wednesday.
Other than starting, what do you most regret about writing the book?
Good question. To be fair, like, the first draft was hard, but tractable. It was the point where what I most regret about writing the book is setting myself a deadline where I had to do all of the line edits during the summer holidays when we didn't have any, like, there were no camps or anything, there was no childcare. So I was like, I'm just gonna get up really early in the morning and work until I am disturbed. It did make me disturbed. Like, okay, not planning on writing any more books, but if I do, we do not, the summer does not exist. The summer does not exist in the timeline. It disappeared. It doesn't live here. So yes, don't do major editing projects, especially when you've never done them before, when you don't have any childcare and it's the summer holidays. It's not a good plan.
Was giving Rosamund throwing knives as opposed to like the more common fantasy trope of woman with a sword and your whole aesthetic of woman with a sword,
Sure.
was that a conscious choice? And also what went into it, if it was?
Partially, it was because I had a really cool little bodice dagger that I bought off Etsy, and I thought, that'd be good. But also, so Rosamund, and I didn't want her to have a bow, because I don't have any bows, and archery is difficult. I mean, so are throwing knives, but you can pretend to be good at those if it's only going off screen. Like, you just have to throw it and not make it look terrible, and you're fine. But also, I just wanted her to have a range thing, because if you, like, she can fight with a sword, but also, as someone who does fight with a sword, against, like, Hema people, I'm like, yeah, if you, it's not something you really want to be doing, because they're generally much bigger than you, so if you don't get them in 3 moves, they're just gonna, like, pick you up. They're not allowed to do that in Hema, but, like, they totally would in real life.
Aside from hating writing, would you recommend, not specifically doing the whole
other
thing
people
beforehand?
really enjoy writing, and it's I respect
No, it's not about the writing as
Okay.
such. So would you recommend almost that way of constructing the story of having little vignettes?
It worked very well for me. I'd never been able to, as in I'd written sort of fan fiction and stuff before, and I'd really enjoyed writing fan fiction. Writing fan fiction is a little bit like doing crack though, because if you get a nice review, it's exactly that kind of level of dopamine hit, which was really what the series was. I was like, this is so fun all the time. It's great. It's very helpful to do the vignettes because they help you to know where the story is going. The problem with doing them is that then you have a story and you have to, like, retcon sense into it. Which is sometimes harder and sometimes easier. So, like, I ended up getting rid of characters and swapping scenes around and giving different people things. but it's definitely a way to do things. And I had a lot of fun. I had a ludicrous amount of fun making the short series. So I think it was definitely a good plan for me. I don't know if it's a good plan generally, but definitely worth a go. Because you get to write all the fun parts, and then you go, how do these fit together?
So for anyone here who may be interested in writing and publishing in the future, or anyone that's just is curious about your process, how did you find getting it all down, getting it edited, getting it published? Because I feel along the way I had a few conversations with you as it was going on, and I know there were real sticky patches. There were things that obviously you've learned through this process. Is there anything you could share for any aspiring writers that might be here?
This was a very strange book. And so when people ask for writing advice, I'm always like, I don't know if I can tell you anything useful, because I had, like, people came to me, which is not usual. Like, I had people come to me and go, would you like an agent? And I was like, I don't know. And then I had publishers come to me and go, can we read your book? And then they did. And then they went, actually, we're okay. But in a way that didn't make me feel bad about it, which was quite nice. Like, I had, the first people I spoke to were Bane, which was sort of a joke, and then I sort of forgot that I have YouTube clout, and that people who like swords probably also read a lot of Bane. So they're like, hey, just send us your book, which wasn't even a book at that point, it was like a first draft. And so I sent Toni Weisskopf, the head of Bane Books, like their editor-in-chief. I was like, here you go. She was like, I really like your book, but it's not a fantasy book, so we only publish sci-fi and fantasy. And I was like, that's cool. I had another publisher come along and go, can we read your book? And I said, yes, here you go. And she said, I really liked your book, thanks. I can't market that. I don't know what it is. Like, I like it, but it's not fantasy. Like, that is kind of true, yes. And then I had a couple of different romance imprints come along. I really like your book, thank you. I used to work for, like, think legacy romance publishing, big name. I used to work for them, and so I really liked what you did with the tropes, with, like, your characters. Thank you. This isn't a romance book. I was like, I know. Like, she said, well, you see, the problem is, I said, yeah. She said, it's got this fantasy part, but there's not enough fantasy for it to be a fantasy book. And then it's got this, like, contemporary part, but it hasn't got enough of the contemporary part to be a contemporary romance. And then it's got this meta part, and that just doesn't go anywhere. Like, I wouldn't know where to put that. So we can't market your book. Like, that's okay. I know some people who'll buy it. It's cool. And so that is why I ended up self-publishing. Hey.
So go on then. Where in the bookshop have they actually ended up putting your book?
That's a really good question, because I have been told, because people come and tell me where they find it, it has been shelved in romance. It's been shelved in sci-fi and fantasy. I don't know where it is here, though.
That's good marketing.
Head office have classified it as science fiction and fantasy.
Oh. And mostly people are buying it. Mostly people are, like, coming in to order it, so you don't really have to worry about where you're going to shelve it, because mostly people come in and go, do you have the stabbing book?
I'm sorry, I'm new to this as well. I just want to know whether you've got a couple of favourite sword fights, because I love sword fights.
See, they expect me to go on about it now, which is fair, but, like, The Princess Bride is probably one of my favorites, but everyone always says that because it's deservedly a classic. More recently, I like the Pirates of the Caribbean fight between Jack and Will in the subsequent movies have really fun, like, very ambitious fights, but I like the first one the best because it's just better. I very controversially enjoy both The Last Jedi, the film, and the throne room scene lightsaber fight, and I have now figured out why I like The Last Jedi and a lot of my friends are like, it's okay, or I didn't really like it, or yeah, it was pretty good. I don't remember any of the bits that bore people. I've seen the movie like 3 times, and every time I'm like, oh yeah, this happens. I'd forgotten that. Other good sword fighting. Lockwood & Co. is a Netflix series. It has very good sword fighting. And Lockwood & Co. was sad because a lot of people went, you need to watch Lockwood & Co. And I went, okay. But a lot of people tell me a lot of things, so I wasn't necessarily going to do it. And then a lot of people, in kind of form email way, said, you need to watch Lockwood & Co. And I went, I mean, you did ask politely. So I'll give it like 5 minutes, because a lot of people say things and then I go, but I don't have Hulu or, you know, whatever the American thing is that this is on, or Amazon Prime or whatever. So I thought I'll give it 5 minutes. I was like, oh, this is quite good. I'll watch the rest of the episode. And then I watched the entire series. This was amazing, I'm going to make a video about it. And I said in the video, I don't mind that they stopped it after 1 season, because the season was really good, and I feel like they would have messed it up if they did any more of it, but I hadn't read any of the books at that point. And then I read the books and went, and see, now I weep for what could have been, because these are really good. I'm sad about that. So yeah, Jonathan Stroud writes the Lockwood & Co. series, and it is complete at 5 books, I think, and it's very good. But the series has very good sword fights too.
Do you think actors were better sword fighters 40 years ago than they are now?
Yes, because it was part of the curriculum. I mean, there are still drama schools in the UK which have combat as part of their... So there are still actors who are very good at sword work. But fencing specifically, I think it's less popular, and so obviously that means in the curriculum you spend less time on it, and you're not, you know, there are so many other things that you have to learn that you can't spend lots of time on fencing specifically, because you're doing all of the other things. But it does mean, you know, 40 years ago you had a lot of actors who trained specifically in fencing, and not even in stage fencing. A lot of them just trained as fencers. And because they put a lot of time into it, because they didn't have so many other things that they needed to do, then they were better at it. But sword fighting in movies has become, you know, everything goes in popularity cycles, and so, you know, it was great when Pirates of the Caribbean came out, though it did mean I was told that for a period of several years there were a lot of Jack Sparrow impersonators at stage combat exams. So for context, when you are doing a stage combat exam, you are given a set of choreography, so you're like, okay, here is your pair, this person is person A, you're doing this side of the choreography, you're person B doing this side, you learn it, and then once you sort of have it learned, you put it to a scene. So you have to take a scene. If you're like a beginner, they make you take a scene from a published play, preferably before 1950, so you get a lot of Shakespeare, because it's free and on the internet, but other things as well. But when you get up the levels, you can just pick anything. So you can pick text from a video game, from a movie, from a TV show. And so there was a period of time where Pirates of the Caribbean was it. And so they're like, and we're doing a scene from Pirates of the Caribbean. And the examiners, I think, you know, there are only so many impressions of Johnny Depp you can take in a day. And so after that, then there was less Pirates of the Caribbean and more Game of Thrones, and that was much better, because even though there are lots of iconic scenes, so you can, you know, you may see 4 scenes from Game of Thrones in the same like big batch, but at least they're all different scenes.
With like movie fight scenes, how much of the quality of them is down to the actual actors, and how much of it is down to the quality of the choreography? Because like I do kendo, and so like when we look at a really cool fight between 2 people, like there's no choreography there, you know, it's because these 2 people are very skilled, or in the case of me, very clumsy, because I tend to fall over a lot. It's a good thing I know how to fall. But like, how that's not choreographed, but a fight scene is choreographed, because there's no way you could do it otherwise. So which one is more important, and can good actors trump bad choreography, or vice versa?
I think so, yes. Like, you can make very basic choreography look amazing if you're good. And I'm an actor combatant, which means I have taken a bunch of exams, and so I'm decent. So you could put me on a stage and be like, hey, you have like 1 day to learn this, and then you're going to be doing that fight on stage, and I'd be like, no problem. But when you do the fight exams, you get to work with people who are they're amazing, and they can, it doesn't matter how simple it is, they can make it look good. Like, choreography that's actively bad is very hard to make good. That just, you know, has been put together by someone who doesn't know what physics is. But usually if you do fight choreography, you're at least, you know, somewhat versed in that. I think if you have good choreography and good actors, you can do amazing things, but even if you have something basic, having actors who know what they're doing means they can sell it. When you have actors who are struggling, then you can choreograph it to help. So you can make them look better than they are by, I there's no shade in that. The whole point is to make us look better than we are. I cannot, you know, I can't actually fight people with swords terribly effectively, but, you know, sometimes I look amazing while pretending to do it. But yeah, I think if you have actors who are not very good, then you need to arrange the choreography to work around them, rather than going, here's what you're doing, just look awkward while doing it, I guess.
May I ask a question which has got nothing to do with the book or anything
Sure.
like that? Yeah. How's Nemo, and has he stolen any of the neighbours?
He's fat again. Nemo is my cat. And when we lived in Canterbury, he got very fat because we would feed him like a normal cat amount, and then he would go around the neighbours' houses, break in, steal their food, and then come back and ask for more. And possibly also people were feeding him because he's got a cute little face. So, you know, he comes up and they feed him. So we moved to an entirely different place, and for the first couple of weeks he couldn't go outside, and so he just ate the normal amount of food, and then he went outside, but he didn't know where any of the food was yet. So he lost weight, and then he was like a normal cat size for a while, which was great. And then he started catching squirrels. And he brought home, at one point he brought home 3 squirrels in 1 week, and then a pigeon. And I was like, no. Stop. Yeah, so he's very good at hunting, apparently. Either that or the squirrels where I live are exceptionally stupid, like even by squirrel standards. So yes, he's doing very well, and he is not quite spherical yet, but we've got him on diet cat food to see if we can get him to lose some weight, because cat diabetes is really expensive, so I don't want him to get it.